I love you, Christopher Eccleston. Chris Eccleston, I love you, yes I do. I love you, Christopher Eccleston. Chris Eccleston, I love you, yes I do. And in the Heaton Park, the litter falls onto the ground. The world it turns and shifts, and you, the nature we're defending. So, does anyone know what song I was doing a parody of there?
No, sorry.
No. Okay, so you're gonna be really confused right now. It's a song called "The King of Carrot Flowers" Part 2 by Neutral Milk Hotel.
I've heard of them. I didn't know it was a real band. I thought it was a parody name of an indie band.
No, but you've got a beauty.
No, yes, because obviously there's the joke that if your if your Milk Hotel is neutral in the face of injustice, then you are siding with the Milk Hotel of the oppressor. So it's a weird band name, but basically the original lyric was "I love you, Jesus Christ." So
I see.
Hi. So after we recorded this episode, some serious allegations came out about the bass guitarist from Neutral Milk Hotel. Firstly, I just want to give my support to Nessie Gallons for coming out about her experiences. That takes a lot of courage, and it's good that she did. Secondly, I wanted to include this bit because I have enjoyed their music a lot over the years, and I don't want that to be brushed away. But now, with this new information, I don't think I'm going to be able to keep listening to them. So, with that out of the way, let's get on with the episode.
I was going to say, Louis, you've got a beautiful singing voice.
Thank you.
I think you should give up the day job and go pursue a music career.
Hello and welcome to Davis on Davis, the podcast all about the work of Russell T Davies. And now it seems to also be about indie rock bands from the 90s that people with no friends like.
We do seem to go on tangents about your various interests, Louis.
I love the tangents. I think there should be more.
And
well, what's great is whenever we talk about trains, I get to plug my podcast on the Discord servers that are about trains that I'm a part of. So that's why I talk about trains, so I can tell the Discord servers, hey, I talk about trains on my new podcast. Yeah. I need to just start an actual podcast about trains.
Yeah, you should. Davis on
the tracks.
No, I thought about it. I thought calling it like off track, but turns out there's already podcasts plural called off track.
Cool, yeah.
About trains?
No, they're about like sports and stuff and racing and.
Oh. But then I suppose there's a perfect niche then for a train related off track.
Yeah.
Menu.
Now, one thing I thought is, you know how there's a bunch of podcasts which are all based off of the phrase "the rest is history," but they'll be like "the rest is politics, the rest is football."
Yeah.
I thought what we need is a bunch of very corporate podcasts, all made by the same company, but are based off of the phrase "the Industrial Revolution and its consequences." Like, I want to hear football and its consequences. I want to hear history and its consequences. I want to hear politics and its consequences. I want to hear Russell T Davies and its consequences.
His consequences are many and annoying.
They've been a disaster for the human race.
By which I'm referring to the multitude of fans.
For one thing, God's dead now, so, you know.
Spoiler! You just... Spoils. Spoiler. You'll be hearing for the very first time, faithful listener, the voice of a female on the Davis on Davis podcast.
Am I your first ever female?
Yes, you are.
Gosh.
Yes.
Dear listener, I'm Zach Copeland-Green. You've been listening to the voice of Louis Davis introduce us there. And also we're joined today by Pip Carew. Hello, Pip Carew.
Hello, Zach Copeland-Green and Louis Davis. I'm really happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming, Pip Carew.
For the people that don't know who you are, Pip Carew, who are you?
I am Pip Carew. I would generously call myself a writer. And I attend the University of Salford with Zach, and we are good friends, I would say.
Yes.
And I'm meeting Louis for the first time today. And yeah. And I'm also the #1 fan of Davies on Davies.
I believe Pip won a lottery to come and be a guest on today's show. So that's why she's joining us here today. As my friend, I tried to convince Louis that Pip was raised a Catholic, so therefore had sort of insightful knowledge on religion.
Yeah, I do have some thoughts.
Were you raised a Catholic, or was your mum raised a Catholic?
No, I was raised Catholic, and I do still have some allegiances to that creed.
Sorry, I know it was a bit weird to say your mum, but that's because my mum was raised Catholic.
Oh, really? Is she Irish?
No, she's Quebecois, but whenever she meets an Irish person, they always have so much in common because Quebec is like, what if Irish people spoke French? It's literally... What if Irish people spoke French and there were more log cabins?
That sounds beautiful.
Genuinely, there are so many parallels.
That sounds like heaven.
Well, no, because a lot of it is a sort of shared religious trauma. I mean, did you?
Yeah,
okay,
well,
so I found this out recently. So basically, birth certificates were originally all issued by the church, the Catholic Church. On my mum's certificate, but original birth certificate, her first name was Marie because every girl's first name is Marie, like Mary and Joseph, and then every boys ones, I think it's like Jean. It's like John, but it's also Joseph. So you know what I mean? Like it's so every girl is Marie, every boy is Jean, but then the name after that is your actual name, right? And so all the birth certificates were reissued in 1999 without the Marie or the Jean in front. And so because my granddad died before 1999, his birth certificate didn't have like a serial number or an issue number or whatever, which so if you sort of talk about him with the Canadian government stuff, his birth certificate doesn't have a number on it, but then all the other family members who were alive in 2000 did, because all the birth certificates were reissued.
That's an interesting fact, though.
TLDR, the Catholic Church used to be way too powerful in Quebec, and thankfully it's not anymore.
Yeah, no, that's actually very interesting, because I'd say administration is one of the church's strong points, and that's kind of why they have their influence globally, because they're just really well organised. We'll get into it.
No, thank you for drawing an actual point out of what I just said.
That's why today's episode is probably going to be the most, don't want to say interesting, but I want to say illuminating episode of the podcast, because we might actually, for once in our lives, make a point about something.
Well, I think this is an interesting thing to come on for, because it is a show that's making a bit of a statement about who we are as people and the purpose that religion serves in our everyday lives. And so I found it very, very heavy for a Friday morning.
Don't draw back the curtain and reveal what day of the week it is. Louis doesn't like that.
Okay.
I actually don't mind that so much. It's not like you can say what day you're recording on. I don't mind that. There's other bits of showing how the sausage is made, but I can't remember off the top of my head. Because Zach does bring up the idea of me not liking it a lot. I'm like, no, I don't mind too much. It's pretty case by case.
Okay, well, you're the editor, so you can always edit out anything you don't like.
How are you doing, Louis? What have you been up to since the last time we recorded?
So doing my stuff.
Wow.
Editing the episodes. I recently got into Chapel Roan. Great music. Love to see queer musicians making really good music, Yeah, and I mean, I think... No, I don't think a lot has happened, because, Doctor Who's ended now, so there's not much to talk about anymore. So, that's... I don't know, have you done anything?
Oh, well, it's funny you talk about Doctor Who, actually, Louis, because I've got a little anecdote for you. I went to the midnight screening of The Legend of Ruby Sunday and Empire of Death with my good friend Pip Carew, who just so happens to be here with us.
That's me.
So Pip and I went to one of the many cinemas in Manchester that were showing the screening. Because I picked my favourite. I've got a favourite cinema in Manchester, favourite view. Just bear in mind I think the number was 290. So just under 300 cinemas across the country were screening the midnight finale of Doctor Who. And I picked one in Manchester. And to our shame, Pip and I were late because we got stuck in traffic.
It's my fault because I went for an extra drink. So, to my shame.
We missed the first 10 minutes of The Legend of Ruby Sunday, which fortunately...
It's okay. If you drink enough alcohol, you actually start driving better. But there's a really narrow sweet spot. That's a joke. Don't try this.
No, we were in an Uber.
Neither of us can drive, so
no, there
it's
you
all
go,
right.
exactly. So with that, but we watched The Legend of Ruby Sunday. And then there's a 15-minute interval as we wait for the Empire of Death to start, bang on midnight.
Yeah, probably wasn't the end of the world, but you missed the episode you likely already had seen.
Well, I'd already seen it. Pip hadn't already seen it.
I was a bit in the dark, but I sort of thought it's Doctor Who. Like, they're going to get in a TARDIS and they'll all be friends by the end of the episode. That's kind of how it goes.
Yeah.
So yeah, I sort of had to brief Pip on what happens in those first 10 minutes. Anyway, during the interval, Pip, you ran to the loo, didn't you?
I did, I sprinted.
This story does have a point, by the way, dear listener. And Pip runs to the loo, and I'm sort of sat on my phone. Ooh, what am I going to do for the next 15 minutes? Ooh, what am I going to do? And the guy next to me says, ooh, I think people have started to notice now. And I'm like, what? What have people noticed? And I turn around, dear listener, and in one of about 300 screens showing this finale, at the back of the one that Pip and I were sat in, stands Russell T Davies himself on the top row, watching along with us. So I run to the queue that was forming next to him to get a photo. And I summon Pip from the loo, and we stand and we get a photo.
It summoned me from the loo. Yeah, I got like several very like, Pip, come now, look, you'll never guess.
Yeah, I saw the screenshot.
It was like, what's happening?
So we managed to sort of watch Doctor Who with Russell T Davies. We got to have a very, very brief chat with the man himself as well.
Zach was very smooth. You were very, honestly, very good, very like, oh, hello, we've met before, actually. And he was obviously very kind. I was completely starstruck, completely dumbfounded. All I could say was, I love Leslie Sharp. Didn't even say anything nice about him or his writing or what he's contributed to British pop culture in the past, like, 20 years. No.
I think he probably...
Bob and Rose.
I think he probably liked that because I said, oh yeah, Pip loves Bob and Rose. And we got an exclusive. This is an exclusive for the Davis on Davis podcast. Ross T Davies said to us that he thinks Bob and Rose is the best thing he's ever written. So there you go. That's an exclusive for the Davis on Davis podcast. Put it in writing.
Do you think anyone like ever comes up to him and says, God, that was the worst thing you've ever written?
I can imagine, possibly. He did say to the person in the queue in front of us, he said, like, I really hope you enjoy Empire of Death. And if you don't tell me.
That's the best way to do it, I think.
So clearly he's probably maybe not recently, but probably earlier on in his career, he was probably told he was rubbish quite a lot.
But people will say like anything on Twitter, but you think face to face, is someone really going to say that to the man himself?
Yeah, face to face. Phil Collinson was also there, dear listener. No one wanted a photo with Phil Collinson, apart from me. You kind of almost felt for him,
yeah,
because all the limelight was being stolen by the big man, the very, very tall 6 foot something man. And then we proceeded to watch The Empire of Death with Russell T Davies, which was a surreal experience. And possibly, I don't know about you, Pip, but I think it was the best cinema experience I've had in my life because...
Oh, 100%. The energy was so good.
Everyone was sort of cheering, laughing, a proper American cinema experience where everyone's sort of like laughing when... That moment when like Andrew Garfield appears in Spider-Man No Way Home and you've seen reaction videos of people in the cinema. It felt like that. And there was a guy sat next to me who started ugly crying at the end, and he said to himself, he was like, oh, I'm proper ugly crying now. So yeah, it was wow.
Yeah, it was quite a beautiful experience.
I was under the assumption that it would only really be like one cinema per like city, and so when I saw that you'd met him in Manchester, I thought, oh, that figures. That, I mean, it's good going, but that figures. But actually, when you say that there were like multiple cinemas and you chose your one, in the city,
yeah, he could have gone to Printworks. He could have gone into like the fancy view they've got there, or he could have gone anywhere. But no, he chose Salford, and that's special, and it's fate that we met him.
What's even funnier is there were 2 screens in the cinema we were in showing it. So as we exited, the people in the screen next door to us also exited, and then people were like, oh, we had Russell T Davies in our screen and you didn't, ha 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 ha.
It's quite funny.
Wow.
So that was funny. So yeah, it was quite fortuitous.
I think for the purposes of podcast, we should say that whatever Russell T Davies' favourite TV show he's written is the one we're going to review after this one. So
okay, yeah.
Just to keep people hooked.
So keep listening to find out what it is.
Don't want people to think that it's peaked.
The best is behind.
Yeah. The best is yet to come.
It was funny.
The best thing Russell T Davies has written is the one he hasn't written yet.
Yeah,
I think,
yeah. Which will be a remake of The Second Coming, supposedly, according to one interview he gave last month.
I did see
Well,
that,
he announced that he wants to make a new show. That's a bit of news. He wants to make a new show about how things are like getting worse, basically, in terms of queer rights, which I think would be good because, to me at least, it would make up for the sins of years and years.
We'll unpack this later, yeah.
We'll get into it when we actually discuss the show. But like things were already getting worse in 2019, and the show just felt very naive in that regard, and didn't want to engage with, you know, actual sort of queer rights and stuff, and instead just try to like translate some of it to the transhumanism subplot, but also like bury its end sound a bit. But yeah, as we say, best show he's ever written. Who knows? It could be that one, right? It could be the upcoming one.
Yes. Well, it's very interesting that I was reading an interview with Gemma Redgrave, who plays Kate Lethbridge Stewart in Doctor Who.
I want to keep calling her Kate Stewart. I liked the thing about wanting to earn it and not be an Epa baby. And like, obviously, she still is kind of, you know, the child of a legacy character. But we know that she's there because she's a metatextually because she's a daughter of a legacy character. But it's nice that there's this idea of wanting to earn it, and now it's like, could she not just stay Kate Stewart? I thought that was fine.
Well, I was reading an interview with the actor that plays Kate Stewart.
Yeah.
And she name drops how much she loved Bob and Rose.
Aww.
So it's one of those things where I thought it was quite a thing that people had forgotten and not seen. But it seems that if you were around in the 2000s, you saw Bob and Rose and you thought it was the best thing you'd ever seen. And that was what made her want to work with RTD. And she also in this interview name drops Mine or Mine, which is the next show that we'll be reviewing on the podcast. So that's why people should stick around.
Yes.
Because it's got Gemma Redgrave's endorsement.
I found something which is genuinely very rare, very hard to come by, a Mine or Mine DVD,
Dun, dun, dun.
which is good because a lot of stuff was cut out of the TV broadcast.
Oh, wow.
It was meant to be 6 episodes. It got shortened to 5 episodes, but the DVD is 6 episodes.
Whoa.
Ooh, yeah.
Ooh.
No, yeah, I see your faces.
Do you know, that's the one thing I miss about DVDs. All those like bloopers and those like
Oh, yes, I am.
cutscenes. You never get that nowadays. Like, where does all that stuff go?
I'm going
YouTube,
to
probably.
look at everything on that DVD. I'm going to do the commentaries, as you say, bloopers, every single possible thing I can get out of the... I don't know if you call it a box set for a series.
Do you know what I would give for a Bob and Rose DVD?
Yes, but
Oh my
unfortunately
God.
you live half away across the country
I
from
would give
Zach's.
so much money and my left kidney to own one of them. And I'm not even like a collecting person, but I just think, how cool would that be?
Have you not listened to... I did the thing on the podcast where I opened it and
No
closed
way,
it
I
and
didn't
played
know you
it.
did.
Yes,
physical one?
this is canon information, yeah.
This is canon on the Davies on Davies podcast.
But it has production on it. I've looked at the things. It's got production notes, which are just some sort of like notes on why Russell T Davies chose to write it. But it does have an audio commentary for, I think, 2 of the episodes with Alan Davis and Russell T Davies. So you get Davis and Davis on Davis and Davis.
God, it never ends.
So yeah, I suppose if you want
Yeah.
to listen to the commentaries, Pip, I suppose you can borrow it.
I don't have a DVD player, so it'd be useless. I just want it to frame it or
No.
look at it lovingly.
Right, this has been our longest intro ever.
It has, yeah. Pip, you're too talkative.
So let's get into the episode post-haste.
We open on Leslie Sharp as Judy. It's incredible how long it took us last episode to realise that Judith sounds like Judas. And that gives us a sense of the kind of role that Leslie Sharp's character is going to play in The Second Coming.
I picked up on it pretty quickly.
Okay, well, it took me until Joe said it last
I
episode.
just picked up on it just now when you just said that.
See, I'm not the only one who is a bit thick.
Well, because you were quick to see that Pete was Peter, right?
Yeah, I saw that, yeah.
Jesus is like the most famous one.
I was preoccupied because on clocking off, Leslie Sharp's character is called Trudy. And I was like, oh, it's funny that she's Trudy and then she's Judy.
What's interesting and what threw me is the fact that
That was where my brain was at.
Judas is a woman
Continue,
in this
Zach.
version of the story, and that becomes very important in this episode, as we'll see. So we open on her, which is a choice. Why is this episode about Leslie Sharp's character? She's packing a bag in her house, and then outside her house, she's absolutely mobbed by the press, and she has to be escorted by the police to the police station, along with Peter, interestingly, not Fiona, the third friend. And we sort of had an interesting discussion with Joe in the last episode about how Peter and Judy and Fiona are sort of three different perspectives on religion. You've got the believer, the doubter, and the kind of agnostic who's in the middle, not really sure what to make of it, or kind of thinks it's true, but doesn't want to go all in. So she has decided not to come. And instead, we've got Judith, Peter, we've got Frankie, Steve's dad.
He's just called Frank.
Oh, is he not called Frank? Okay, he's called Frank.
No. Pete. Later on, Pete will call him Frankie Boy in a slightly patronising tone. But we'll get to that.
It's Frank. And they've arrived the day before the deadline for the testaments at the offices. Yeah, and everyone's there. Johnny Tyler's there on the TV. This is being broadcast live.
Yeah, he looks into the TV camera and is like, yo, I dated her. Doesn't want the world to think he's a loner.
And everyone is sort of given rooms in the weird offices that we saw last time Steve was given to live in. And we get a kind of a bad CGI flashback to the bomb at the end of episode 1 from Judy and Steve's perspectives. I don't know what we thought about that.
It reminded me of that movie Birdemic. I don't know if you guys have seen it, where the birds are like photoshopped into the frame. It was like this crazy fire that looks like someone's got from Microsoft Paint and superimposed it.
It felt a bit like a lo-fi version of one of the visions from Dune.
Yes. I see the vision though.
It's a bit surreal. There's a moment where Steve, the crowd is out there and Steve goes up to them and they all go wild. And then he ducks out the window and they're pipe down. And then he makes it so he can look at the TV while he jumps out and see the crowd jumping up. He's not the Messiah. He is a very naughty boy.
Good reference. I like that.
Yes, indeed. It's a great reminder that although he's the Messiah, he's very much just this normal man again from Salford. I really like how this characterization is continued throughout the show. Through everything he does, he never loses that sense of just being an ordinary guy. And I kind of think an ordinary guy would kind of do that, would goof about. If people were going to go mad with just your appearance, I'm amazed that the Queen Elizabeth II never did anything like that when on the balcony of Buckingham Palace. That's because that's what I do.
Yeah, but you're not the Queen.
It's interesting because my dad always makes this joke whenever we're in a hotel or there's a balcony or there's a high platform where he'll pretend to be the Pope and he'll come out and say, my children, my brothers and sisters. And that really, because that's what the Pope kind of does. He appears and people are like, whoa, it's the Pope. And it reminded me of my dad, and my mum always tells me off for doing that. So it sort of gave me that vibe of I'm the Messiah. Whoa, look at me.
It's fine. My Pope impression is just hey, I'm the Pope. And I know that's bad because right now the Pope is Argentinian, and there was a papal candidate who was from Quebec, and that was a bit of a big deal when they were choosing the next Pope. But I just can't imagine a Pope without the Italian accent.
Yeah, it feels, that's strange.
It's because of the Horrible History sketch about the Borgias.
Oh, I remember.
If you remember this.
Okay, this is too niche for me now. I can't.
Okay, so the Borgias were a very corrupt family in Renaissance Italy, and one of them managed to become Pope.
And there's, I believe there's an HBO television series called The Borgias that tells that story.
With Jude Law.
But in the Horrible History sketch, they do the Godfather accents, basically.
Okay.
Oh, they are quite fun to do.
I was going to say, I won't do my Pope impression because it clearly involves homophobic slurs, given what the Pope's been up to recently.
God, yeah, the PR has not been great, has it? But you're going to the Vatican soon, aren't you, Zach?
Yeah,
so
I'll put him to rights next week when I'm there.
Yeah, give him a piece of your mind.
When you're standing in the public square that's technically a part of the Vatican, that everyone stands in just to say that they cross the border into the Vatican, when you speak truth to power, yeah.
Find a high platform and tell everybody.
And I'll say, I don't know, I'm trying to segue into Steve and his two disciples and his dad, who's not his dad, as we found, not his biological father, as we found out in the previous episode. They have to go through all the documents that have been sent in as third testaments. And I just thought I had to write them down because I had to mention them. I love them.
Yeah.
The first one they mention is that people need to sort out the one-way system in Oxford, in the centre of Oxford.
No, but like this show predicted the 15-minute cities conspiracy theory, and the fact that for some reason the epicenter of that conspiracy theory movement, of that fanatical movement in the UK, would be in Oxford because of a one-way system.
The traffic in the centre of Oxford is crazy given how tiny it is. Mad. So I agree.
If you guys were going to hand in a third testament, what would you demand?
What would I demand?
Okay, so do you know all those urbanism channels? People like Not Just Bikes and Over the Urbanity and Reese Martin Transit on YouTube. Do you know any of those?
I don't know. I must be on a different side of YouTube.
Well, I'd let them write it. They talk a lot about how to make cities nicer to exist in.
Oh, okay, that's quite interesting. I mean, I'm from Milton Keynes, so I know all about cities being a bit dystopian nowadays.
Wow.
And the grid system, and just never seeing people walking around because it's so car oriented.
I feel like I'm speaking to a subject matter expert. Like,
it's so weird because when I came to Manchester, I was like, this is a real city. This is what cities should be like. You see people. In Milton Keynes, you never see anyone because everyone's so far apart.
Yes.
So maybe I would abolish Milton Keynes if I was.
Yeah, but like the fact that Milton Keynes is a shorthand in Britain, the way Ohio is a shorthand in America.
Yeah,
like,
I think people are very negative about it, but it's a very safe city to live in. It's just very dull and like a cultural abyss, really.
And here was me going to say my third testament would be about improving LGBT rights, but
that's far too serious. Zach.
No, I couldn't think of any silly ideas. I could just do what one woman seemingly has done and just send in nude photos of myself.
That was so funny.
And hope that...
Yeah, like a lot of them are death threats. As you say, there's some nude photos.
And then clearly Nigel Farage has sent something in because there's Frank reads out a testament that declares that England's for the English and that we should burn the gays and the Jews and deport anyone that's not white.
Yeah.
I feel like Russell really hit on something there because every example we've talked about does represent a certain subsection of the British population. And I think that was what would actually happen.
It's a combination of the minutiae of the built environment and someone whose focus is on the ethnic and gay makeup of the country, it's
and nude photos as well, the OnlyFans subsection of the
And I want to know what this novel was about because that could represent a whole host of people.
Yeah, it's about a guy who really believes in whatever Francis was reading out, learning to be better, actually.
But after these examples, Judith, I think, is a bit fed up of all of this, and she presses Steve to say what happens if they don't find the third testament. I think this is the first time we've seen him do this thing that he'll do a couple of times in the episode, where he sort of goes into a mini trance and he looks.
Yeah.
He looks for the information.
He's gone from downloading to searching, looking up, Googling,
Is it this idea that he's downloaded all this information in his brain and he's just got to search through his brain? Or has he got to search from outside of his brain?
I think it's cloud storage, I think.
Oh, okay.
Just based on... Because he's talked about how tiny human brain... big divine plan,
Yep, he says at one point in this episode, he talks about millions and millions of megabytes being downloaded into a pocket calculator.
It's wild that he says megabytes and not gigabytes.
RTD's going to remake this whole series just to change that joke.
For one joke from Community where Elroy asks, wait, what are you on now? And Arbit is like, terror. He's like,
well, they did it. The bastards, they did it. He looks, and he doesn't see anything, in that he sees nothing. He sees total darkness, and Judy's like, "You're just talking nonsense." But Steve declares that it's going to be Judgment Day if they can't find the third testament tomorrow. Does Steve break the fourth wall at this point? Does he sort of look at the camera? Is there a glance at the camera at this point?
Yeah, I saw that as well, and I thought, there's definitely some zany directing choices in it that I think is the biggest aging of this show.
Yes.
Like the one where he's hitting his head and the camera's kind of jerky.
Yes.
That really took me out of it. I think the director sort of let's put every effect we can in this thing to show that this is a big event.
Like that Indian soap opera video. Do you know the video of an Indian soap opera?
No.
It's basically someone notices someone in a car, but there's loads of transitions to make it more dramatic.
Oh, I think I know
Oh, that's
what you're referring to.
But I find it funny because it's sort of the opposite of like a British soap opera where like everything is incredibly sort of flat and like multi-camera. Like.
Yeah, I read an interview with Russell where he was sort of saying that it needed to look less sparkly than Bob and Rose, and Manchester needs to be less romanticised because it was such a huge story they were telling. They didn't want it to look beyond the scope of reasonable.
It does look very washed out, I think. I think there's actually a deeper reason as to why there's all these weird camera things, but I think will become apparent at the end. So I'm going to put a pin in this conversation and we'll come back to it right at the end. Do not let me forget.
Okay.
But we then see at this point that I think he was like the police commissioner, the like big boss.
Yeah, in my notes I've called him Let Him Cook.
Yeah.
Because until now, his whole thing has been saying, let Steve do his thing. And it turns out that maybe that wasn't because he was a devout follower. He actually was luring Steve into a trap. Because now when he sees Steve saying the apocalypse is coming, he gets the tape and takes it away in like a car, like he's being taxied away.
Turns out he's been recording that entire conversation. This was difficult for my notes because we had the big police boss, the commissioner, the sort of the middle management police guy who's been sort of sorting Steve out. And then you've also got loads of police officers, including the one that's spending lots of time with Steve's father.
Yes.
And there's this scene where he sort of goads Steve's father, basically saying, you're kind of a bit of a loser for raising your son who's not really your son all by yourself. You're basically being a babysitter. You're going to let that stand.
I just want to say to this police officer, hello.
I know, right? Oh, God. Oh, it might have just been me, but I felt like there was a bit of tension between him and Steve's dad. I know he was trying to goad him, but like there was something quite intimate about that scene. I was like, God. Oh.
No, I didn't think it was in that way. I'm just saying that because I think he's
fit.
A very cute little twink police officer, personally.
I wonder if he's been in anything else.
Yeah, so his name is Simon, so I don't have to call him PC Twink the whole time. We don't find that out until a bit later, but his name is Simon, so now you'll know who we're referring to. But yeah, he's spending so much time with Francis, and it's funny because in these interactions, it sort of made me think that he's like the opposite of a stepfather, because the stepfather is the father that stepped up. He sort of had the fatherhood thrust upon him once Steve's mum died. He had to raise Steve all by himself. And now that he finds out that he's not biologically...
Did she die or did she just run away?
I think she's dead.
What do you think, Zach?
I believe she killed herself. I think they say in the beginning of the first episode.
Yes, they do say that in episode 1, yeah.
Oh, gosh.
And so he's like the opposite of a stepdad. He's like a trip dad, because it's sort of now that he realises that it was never his son, that's sort of enough to make him go psycho mode.
Just to interrupt, the actor who plays Simon is DS Aidan Healy in Vera. He's got a major part in Vera.
Oh, good for him.
If you think he's hunky,
I'm so happy.
Go watch Vera.
Wait, is he a police officer in Vera as well?
Yes, he's an inspector. A DS is a
detective
sergeant. Yeah,
because the D is always detective, and then it's detective inspector, detective sergeant. Yeah, you think detective? Ooh, do they solve crimes? And then and what they're just doing is beating up protesters. It's a real shame.
Anyway, we find out that Steve finds out that the big Let Him Cook, as Louis is calling him, has taped him and has taken it to the news, and it's being broadcast on every channel. They don't actually use the word apocalypse. I don't know why I'm calling it. Judgment Day is on its way, and the world goes mad. There is literally, and it's a good 5 minutes of just the world. Maybe not 5 minutes. It feels a very long time for just everybody going mad. We get this classic RTD on the news. So we see the same news reporters that we had last time in the last episode, reporting that city centres are no-go areas. The UK's under martial law. There's riots at British embassies across the world, and Johnny Tyler's sat rolling in his bed, watching all of this unfold on the telly.
He's really giggling, and I find it hilarious. He hasn't actually done anything yet.
It's so, I don't know if it's lazy writing or whoever came up with it. The fact every time we see him in bed, he's eating some kind of junk food. It's either chips or it's pizza. it seems like such a cruel, like, look at this man whose life is shit and he has problems with his diet as well.
Look at this dude, yeah.
But don't we establish that he's kind of like having a tough time anyway, and he's also possessed because he's a lonely soul?
Yeah. Yeah.
Driving him to binge eat.
Oh yeah, there's also the Emergency Coalition of Churches is mentioned, like it's some wartime cabinet.
It makes sense if there was a theological emergency, which this is.
Yeah.
We see what Fiona's up to, and I kind of think, as from last episode, Fiona's the most balanced person who kind of knows what's going on, and she's like, okay, the world might end, but really what this whole thing has taught us is it's about being with the people you love and being kind to one another. And I almost thought this would end up being the show's ultimate message, that Fiona would have the secret to the Third Testament.
I mean, she kind of does.
She kind of does, but there's a massive flaw in her thinking, because her husband, when he finds out that the world's ending, he walks out and wants to go sleep with someone else. And that's when she's in the street. She's screaming at him, I love you, I forgive you, it makes it all okay as long as I forgive you. You know, it's all about friends and family. And then I think when she realizes that he's not going to come back, she snaps. And then she says, well, what happens if nobody loves me? If nobody loves me, what's the point? And that's when I thought, okay, she doesn't quite get it.
Yeah.
Because there's a desire to be loved as well as a desire to love.
I think I got a sense of, it's kind of like this blind faith when she says, isn't that what it's all about? Family and loved ones and things. And it's kind of like, she's got the idea, she's getting there, but it's kind of, you see that her faith isn't actually that strong, because as soon as her husband leaves, she doesn't feel that she can continue to carry on, and it's kind of that.
Things is a little consumerist, you know.
Yeah, family and things.
Stuff, treats.
What are the things? You know, stuff. And it's interesting because I think so much of like Catholic ideology is about having God with you always. So even when her husband leaves, if she was a true, or Christian ideology, let's not just say Catholic, if she was a true believer, she wouldn't feel so lonely. But also the way he left her was so horrible that it would drive any woman to madness, I think.
Well, yeah, I think it makes total sense, yeah.
Because I can understand leaving to follow your urges that you haven't been able to act upon because you've got little time left. But these are your kids, man. These are your kids and your family.
But then there's an interesting parallel that does, and again, I shouldn't dwell on it, but there's a very interesting parallel that happens in Years and Years. I think RTD reused this idea with another character leaving their partner when they think the world might be ending to go have an affair. And
that's a triumphant moment because we're aligned with that character. But in this, we don't care for her husband because we've seen that he's exploiting the whole situation anyway.
Yeah.
She acts, for the actor for Fiona, she acts her butt off like it is a mad scene.
Yeah, it's so sad.
And so her like banging on the car and being in the front of the car while it's revving up, it's like I was like
I thought he was going to run her over.
No, yeah, I mean I thought he was going to reverse out or something, but she actually like steps to the side for 1 second, allowing him to sort of drive forward out away from her. But it's yeah.
Interesting you mention that because Salford is such an industrial landscape. I don't want to call it a wasteland. That's so mean about Salford. But I mean the sort of like the sense that it was this thriving industrial city at one point, and that's kind of gone, especially in the early 2000s.
Yeah, especially in the 1980s.
Was it?
That's a joke about Thatcher.
Oh, boo. Where were we?
Steve admits that he pretended to fancy someone else when they were at school so he could spend time with Judy. And then she reveals that she knew all along, which I think we kind of probably knew right from that first scene in the first episode. It's not a triumphant moment, I don't think, because she sort of has a go at him saying, you finally have something to say, but it's too late, because she's basically goaded him for not being able to make his mind up about anything or be able to say anything other than I don't know. And she very interestingly says how she prefers the old version of Steve, which I think, again, perfectly lines up with what we've seen in the previous episode of her being the Judas figure, the doubter, the non-believer. But then she gives in anyway and they start making out. And then they go to a bedroom and start making out. And it's quite for me, it was an uncomfortable watch.
Really? Oh gosh, no, I was smiling. I think RTD does really good love confession scenes, which is why I was so into Bob and Rose, because there's so much of that will they, won't they. I don't know if they're right for each other, but I was happy that they had that moment together.
I just thought good for them, you know.
And they were like laughing in spite of it all. Do we think they should be together?
I don't know. It's the laughing was one of the things that put me off. Not that I think laughing during sexy time is a bad thing. Please don't read that into my own personal life. It was more the fact that Steve takes his shirt off, like he's really into it. And then this, I think, is that the suggestion that he's actually quite lustful in this scenario. And she's like, oh, steady on. And then he starts obsessing over whether the lights should be on and off. It feels almost unnatural, not organic, if that makes sense.
I think it's because their relationship's moving from the friend relationship to something else that they haven't quite defined yet. There is that awkward transition in it that you really get a sense of.
Yeah.
And also, I don't think she knows if she wants to do it either. When she tells him to slow down and she's the first one to laugh, I think it's a very interesting negotiation of, if you only had a certain amount of time left, would you act on these feelings you've had your entire life?
Maybe she was just saying slow down because she realised that, oh, no, he really is a virgin.
Oh, of course. No, that's true. That was the point made at the end of the last episode. Maybe that explains why it's an odd moment. We then wake up the following morning and everything's very, very quiet. We see a load of people sleeping on the floor of the police station. The riots from the madness of the previous day have ended, and we see Judy and Steve awake in their single bed. A little bit awkward because obviously the police station had not designed for them to be sharing beds together and given them double beds. They've given them all singles. And this is when we learn from, again, the guy that I've called the police commissioner. He says that Steve sleeping with a woman makes him more human and more vulnerable, and then gives some pills to this police officer, Steve.
Simon,
so not Steve. Oh god, Steve is Christopher Eccleston. That's why I called Steve lustful.
Yeah,
he is the human inside of him that wants Judy and wants to have this relationship with her, this and make their friendship sexual because it's lust.
I think it was really. I think that bit was very interesting because when you see depictions of Jesus or a Christ-like figure, they're mostly, if not always, presented as asexual. So it's interesting to have a character that is quite literally the Son of God have a sex life. It's pretty. I think that's probably the most blasphemous, quote unquote, part of the whole thing.
Yeah.
And I think if I was staunchly religious, that would be the bit that I'd have a problem with.
Yeah, I think one of the reasons that this sort of wasn't too controversial as a TV show covering, what it does, is that if there's not loads of Jesus imagery, you don't see Steve sort of putting his arms out like he's on the cross a load of times.
Just once.
It draws far more from sort of the story of Christ and the Son of God and sort of that side of it, and not a Renaissance painting. So we get the most intense scene now. Simon, everyone's favourite evil demon twink, gives pills and some liquid to help him swallow it. I think probably some alcohol, and
that's quite intimate. You guys were saying there was an intimacy between the two when he's sort of putting things inside Frank's mouth. There's an intimacy there. I think there's your Chekhov guns just gone off, guys.
Yeah.
Oh, spoilers with that use of imagery there.
The good cop that's been sort of helping Steve this time goes to let him cook. Goes to the commissioner. He sees the demon eyes. He figures out that, oh no, this guy's evil. It's the classic thing of Frank is going up there in a lift, and so the police officer has to run up the stairs, and then he has a heart attack.
Does he?
He's clutching his heart.
I thought he was just really unfit.
He collapses.
Oh my god, I clearly wasn't watching.
I mean, okay, maybe he doesn't have a heart attack. Look, he collapses on the stairs, and the next time we see him, he's being taken into an ambulance. So he doesn't die,
okay.
But
there was a lot of stairs. I can empathise with him.
Some kind of arrest that stops his legs from moving.
And that's why Frank took the lift.
If you're going to murder someone, guys, take the lift. Quick escape.
Frank, he walks into the room, not out of breath, and sticks on some club music on a CD, very loud, and Judy is like, "Hey Frank, can you turn it down? We're just trying to think here, because they're in crisis mode. The apocalypse is happening." And he's like, "Oh Frank, oh you're calling me Frank," and it's like, "Yeah, that's your name, bitch." And then he points the gun at his own son. It's like, no, I'm sorry, you raised this kid. You're really telling me in 30 odd years you don't have any sort of good memories to cling on to. You're just focusing on the fact that people are wearing t-shirts that say you shoot blanks, you know. But yeah, he's succumbed to the darkness, so that is all that's going through his mind. Because he says, Frank, he shoots blanks. That's what they're saying. Well, not anymore, because he has a gun. So
I would love someone to remix that into like a club, because it's such a good moment because it's so intense, and yet the music's like,
and also the shooting blanks imagery is quite funny.
Yeah, so fun.
So then Pete is trying to calm him down. He's like, hey, Frankie boy, hey, let's calm down. And then he's like standing between him and Steve. And Judy is like, Pete, get out of the way.
So the scene becomes very intense with these sort of four people shouting at each other. Frank's not shouting, but pointing a gun is basically shouting.
And as he's about to put the gun down, as he's about to be talked down by Pete, and especially by Judy, the demon eyes sort of light up.
What do you mean?
And he unloads his not blanks into Pete, unloads the entire gun into Pete's body.
Are we supposed to believe then that the pills that
Simon,
that's how you get the demon eyes? You get drugged.
I don't know what the pills were.
Through substance abuse.
What's a drug that makes you act on impulse, you know?
I couldn't possibly know, Louis. I think it was Coke, or it looked like MSD.
Well, no, it was
MSD. LSD. I was thinking about MSG, the Chinese.
It was something medicinal. It was like Adderall or something.
Yeah,
like
I think
that,
he was just really like hyper. It was doing something to his neurons.
Yeah,
and he was washing it down with whiskey or whatever that was.
I like the metaphorical answer you gave, Pip, of it's a metaphor for substance abuse, and that's how the devil gets you.
Interesting, yeah, because the people we see with the light up eyes, apart from the police officers, all have issues with addiction, or I'm forming a thought here. What's that deadly sin? Gluttony.
Yeah.
So is it Johnny has issues with gluttony? Frank has issues with gluttony as well because he's always drinking. And then the police officers...
They're rough because they're cops.
Yeah, they're just corrupt anyway because
ACAB.
It's interesting, the police presence is so heavy, but we never really see the government or
That's very true.
Any like higher officials other than the police. Maybe they just didn't have the budget to bring in.
We speculated on whether they had the plan. It's like the alien invasion plan, like the apocalypse plan in a folder somewhere. What if they just don't, and they're just deferring that to the emergency coalition of churches?
Yeah, I would love to see what that looks like.
With Pete dead, covered in blood on the floor.
In Steve's arms.
It's an image that I think, again, we see crop up in the Series 3 finale of Doctor Who. Because there's something very Christ-like about that story again. But that's an irrelevant tangent. Judy asks Steve to bring Pete back, and Steve can't. And so this sort of turns her away, and she leaves.
No, it is wild how in such a short scene, like, so many characters are just gone. The police officer, the good police officer, is out of action. Pete is dead. Frank is taken away to jail, and Judy is going home.
The story kind of becomes about Steve and Judy now, and how the other people affect them. Because the guy we've been calling the police commissioner, I have actually Googled, he's actually the Chief Constable Richard Tanner. So the constable, not the commissioner, cancels Steve's broadcast and places Steve under house arrest. And all those Third Testament papers are taken away by various police officers. So Steve is now left alone with the pools of blood on the floor where Pete lay dying. Meanwhile, Judy has decided to go over to Johnny Tyler's house.
No, she hasn't. Judy wants to be taken home. Yeah. And this is funny because the police officer says, Simon will take you home. And at this point, Simon doesn't have any significance as a name.
But sexy Simon has got other plans.
Your man crush and mine, Pip, comes into shot and you realise, oh no, that's Simon. So she is now in the hands of Simon. And he takes her to Johnny's.
I apologise for being factually incorrect, sorry. First time it's ever happened.
Yes, and you should apologise again for being factually incorrect about...
For being factually, yes, no, I should. She ends up driven to Johnny Tyler's house by sexy twink Simon.
Yes.
And this is where we get, I think, the interesting...
Tumblr sexy man.
We get this sort of the ideology behind the devils, because it's all about luring Steve to fall.
Yeah.
And they want to bring him down to hell so that he can rule over hell. The Son of God can rule over hell. And we get this really interesting idea about how all the people that have been possessed are people who already had evil in them and they just needed a little push. Like Frank already hated Steve. So maybe his sin is not gluttony, but I wanted to say envy.
Frank's sin would be wrath.
Yeah.
He just straight up hates his own kin, you know.
Wrath, that's good, yeah. Sorry, I lost you for a few minutes there. Have you covered the drive me Chilton now bit? The best line in the whole 2 episodes. Drive me Chilton now.
Almost. We're almost there.
Okay, cool.
Because Johnny lets on the plan is still in action, and that basically he just needs to corrupt Judy. And she's like, you're not going to. You haven't done so far. So, and there's no one else left. So what are you going to do? Then he's like, oh no, there's someone left. There's someone you've forgotten about.
It's Fiona.
A housewife. I feel like saying it's a housewife was maybe making it a bit too obvious, but you know, she clocks on to who he's talking about.
We find out though, which we commented on last time, the reason the first devils we see, that woman in the car who wants to go to the university, leads Judy to the university to get scientific evidence to make her believe, when both the audience and Judy think the scientific evidence will make her doubt, is because the devil wants Judy to believe in order to make her despair, and then she'll join the devil through despair, and then Steve will fall as well. And we find out from Johnny that they want Steve to fall through his lust for Judy, which is, again, one of those. This is a really good theory, Pip, about the 7 sins.
Yeah.
It's not me, it's all RTD. Straight out the Bible. Really clever. Clever man.
My prediction was that Judy's atheism would mean that angels wouldn't get to her, but neither would demons, you know.
Yeah.
Because her morality would be built from elsewhere. And I guess, yeah, if she believes in heaven, then she'll believe in hell.
But then Judy says, oh, what we have is not lust, it's love. And love is not a sin. Love is something more than that, it seems. But then, yes, we sort of said that all in the wrong order. Then Johnny makes the references to the housewife that Louis said. And then that's when Judy's like, right, drive me. What was it, the line, Pip?
Drive me Chilton now. Word for word. It's great. I'm going to start saying that every Uber ride.
Yeah. And so naturally, Simon is driving really slow. You know, I don't know, maybe he is gay because he's not driving very well either. And eventually she just like jumps out of the car because he's going really slow through like traffic and stuff. And so then he's like, run, Judy, run, you know. We get a dramatic scene because we cut between her running and...
Yeah, this is one of the best scenes. This is a peak RTD, I think. We don't quite see Fiona at first, but we see Hans pouring some Prozac into a drink, then smashing up some more pills and putting them in sandwiches and drinks.
Yeah.
And then we see Fiona serve a tray of sandwiches and juice to her kids.
When we see the kids, we're like, it's like, oh no, she's going to Heaven's Gate her kids. Oh my God.
It's similar with a husband. Like, it's one thing you doing this to yourself, but your children?
And also, when her husband left, she was wondering, if no one loves me, what do I have now? And it's like, you have kids. Shut up.
Yeah.
But I suppose her network of friends have sort of abandoned her as well.
Well, yeah. Well, she could have gone with Steve. Like Dave does say, oh, we could have gone with him. We would be millionaires, you know.
With Judgment Day on its way in the evening, she wants the best for herself and her kids, and she truly believes that is to go to heaven right now.
Yes.
Because she makes her kids do the Lord's Prayer before they eat these pill-laced sandwiches, and she says, I'm taking you to a better place. And that's when Judy bangs on the window saying, Fiona, let me in, let me in.
Shouts through the letterbox, goes around from the door to the window to bang on that. And then we get... Fiona can actually see her.
Yeah, she's brilliant.
At the last minute, she pushes the tray to the floor. Yay. So no one dies in this scene. I was going to say, this would have been very, very dark.
Yeah.
If we'd have seen Fiona kill her kids on screen.
Yeah. I think once you start killing kids, it becomes an entirely different beast.
Yeah.
Yes. And then the police show up, and at this moment we learn from one of the officers that actually a lot of people have been sort of committing suicide on this day to skip the queue to heaven, basically, which is really dark to think about, and the fact that like that's
And he says it in such a laissez-faire way. He's like, yeah,
that's like canon to the program now. It's not just something you would kind of infer, but it wouldn't be confirmed because we don't want to go into that. No, that's a thing that happened beyond like the characters we're following through this story. Like,
it's a cute. You got a cute jump ticket.
yeah.
This scene reminds me of the end of Torchwood Children of Earth, where there is a similar scene where a character, no spoilers if anyone has not seen it, because it's honestly one of the best things RTD has written.
Yeah, don't say anything else, but it's like that bit if you know what we're talking about.
Yeah, there's a one scene where someone tries to do this and successfully does it, and that's why it's so dark.
That's the spoiler now. I'm not gonna...
No, because we don't know who it is.
Well, no, could have been anyone, and it's done very differently.
So much of the show reminded me of 28 Days Later. There's that one shot where Steve is walking in like the abandoned Salford streets in the aftermath and there's no one around.
Yeah.
And then this bit reminded me of the bit where they sort of go to his house and his parents have, because they didn't want to deal with the zombie apocalypse. They feel so in dialogue with each other.
Yeah. I think especially now, because as we move into like the evening, suddenly everything is like quiet. It's not like the sort of pandemonium and chaos and protests and riots and stuff we saw earlier. Now everyone is like, there's no one in the centre of Manchester. There's no apocalypse parties, you know?
Yeah, it's almost worse because you get that really underlying sense of dread. And even in the nice moments in this show, you never feel comfortable. Even when Judy and Steve like have their first kiss, is it Murray Gold again?
Yes.
There's those really foreboding strings that come in, and you sort of think, God, are we not allowed nice things?
You're allowed to think that it's and I think we did mention this, but you're allowed to think for about 2 minutes that this is the same genre of show as Bob and Rose and Queer as Folk, and then straight away,
no. Judy, from this moment with Fiona, realizes something, and so she goes home, and when she arrives home, there's like one police officer, and this is one of the good ones because he gives her keys back, and like her house is like boarded up, but she like, you know, gets in, and he decides to just stay there just in case. At that moment, she phones Steve and says, "Come round for dinner. I think I figured it out."
Dun, dun, dun.
What kicked this off was the police officer who mentioned the mass suicide asked Judy, how can there be a third testament and a judgment day? That was his question, and that got her thinking. And at that moment I was like, well, I mean, it's because the judgment day happens if you don't get the third testament. He asks, is it one or the other, or is it both? And I'm like, well, it's one or the other. That was sort of the ultimatum. But this does get her thinking, and she realises what's going on.
So she phones Steve up, summons him to her house.
Yeah.
But we see her after she says to him that she's figured out what the third testament is, in her, what I presume must be her basement, in cupboard in her house.
It's one of those, yeah.
That picks out the rat poison.
Yes.
And you think, oh no, is she going to try and do it, Fiona?
Yeah.
And we'll find out in a moment. I was going to say, how does Steve escape house arrest?
Oh, it's very cool. I've called it hypno-gaslighting.
It was a real like psychic paper moment.
Yes, he sits in front of a camera that's monitoring him, the camera that leaked the information about the apocalypse, all of this stuff. He sits in front of that camera and he clicks his fingers or something, and then the image of him stays inside that camera. And he walks off, and he walks through the police station, and everyone thinks that he's some new character they hadn't met before. Like, they're like, who are you? And he's like, oh, I'm one of Steve's friends. I just came in. And it's like, oh, okay. And then he like speaks to a police officer, and she's like, wait, why didn't you sign in? And he's like, oh, no, you said I didn't have to, because, you know, obviously there's not much point anymore. And then she's like, oh, yes, I remember. So
that police officer is played by Angel Coulby, who played Gwen in Merlin in the 2008 something. So, yeah. I just thought it was really cool.
Yes, I recognised her.
Wasn't she in the Doctor Who? She was Tish, I want to say?
No, she had a bit part.
No.
She had a bit part in The Gun in the Fireplace.
Oh, yes, she did. Yeah. But if you liked that, like, actor crossover, you're going to love this next one. Because Steve walks through the city and it's completely deserted apart from one guy, like, standing out of his car.
Can I say, he doesn't just walk through the city, he walks through, Pip, did you recognise?
Piccadilly Gardens.
He walks through the very, very Louis, for context, the very centre of Manchester.
No, I need to be stopped because I did recognise the tram junction.
Yes, it's the trams that made me recognise it as well. And I just thought to myself, you know, apocalypse aside, how nice would it be to walk through Piccadilly Gardens without anyone else there?
Very true.
Without anyone bothering you, with no, like, tram horns, with no religious preachers.
I was going to say, it was just really interesting to see from a historical perspective how that looked 20 years ago, because it's recognisable, but also distinctly very, very different. The TV production side of me also wonders, how on earth did they wangle that?
I reckon they probably filmed it really, really early in the morning, like with the 28 days later.
It'll be that, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so he walks across, and while he's walking, we cut between him and Judy, who is cooking and sobbing and pouring rat poison into the cooking and stuff.
Me when I have to cook.
But when he gets to Judy's house, he meets the police officer who we had already met because he's the one who gave Judy her keys. And he says, oh, I'm a friend of Judy's, because he also doesn't recognise him as Steve. So he's like, yeah, I'm a friend of Judy's. I'm on the list. And he's like, oh, yeah. And then I went to school with her. And then so he says, oh, you must have also gone to school with Steve. What was he like? And then Steve is like, oh, yeah, he was a bit of a twat. But this police officer is the Are We Shagging or What guy from the first episode of Queer as Folk.
No.
Oh my god.
So there's an actor crossover. Did you not recognise him?
The one with the fat suit?
As in the guy with the fake muscle?
Or the muscle suit?
Yeah.
Mr. Muscle?
It's that guy. Yeah. It's Mr. Muscle. Did you not?
Oh my word.
Wow.
Yeah. It's him.
I'm not going to lie, I got him confused with the husband of the housewife.
Oh, Dave, yeah.
Is it Susan?
No.
Yeah, they look really similar, bald men.
Dave looks more generic. This guy has a more distinctive look, I think.
Oh, yeah, so this is David Prosho. I'm on his IMDb, who is credited...
So Dave was the actor's name, not the character's.
Who's credited as Muscle Man in one episode of Queer as Folk. That is some incredible actor spotting, Louis.
Wow.
Yeah. And so Steve walks to him and he hypno-gaslights him into letting him into the house. And then when he knocks on the door and when Judy opens it, she does recognise him. And she's like, hi. And they sit down. And it's great because, you know, this show started with the Vatican and now it ends with spaghetti.
You could say that this is the Last Supper.
Whoa.
Yes.
What can I say? I thought that myself.
So she explains that she's figured it out. Basically, the Third Testament is her killing him or him killing himself, doing the self-sacrifice, and that will end not just hell, but also heaven. But it ends heaven, but it takes hell with it. And he's like, no, it's for demons. They've got you. And she's like, no, the demons don't want this. They want you alive so they can turn you. But... if there's no heaven, there can't be any hell. And I really like that as an idea, the idea that it's all one object, the very kind of Western view of there being this kind of pure good and this pure evil, as opposed to something like yin and yang, where it's more about like order and chaos sort of feeding into each other and having to exist together. This one, it sort of says, well, no, actually, these things also have to exist together. If you take out the God stuff, then the demons are gone. And this whole thing has brought us misery, you know, like Pete's dead. Look at me, I'm in a boarded up house. Look at you, you had to hide your face to go anywhere. Sort of this whole second coming thing has been depressing and now it ends and I'm ending it and I don't like it and that's my Third Testament.
Whoa. And on top of that, as well as defeating these evil demons, the conclusion is when the human race kills God and disposes of him, that's when the human race is given the ability to grow up, which is what Steve said himself in his speech to the crowd.
Yes, taking responsibility. But then he's like, well, what if you get left on your own and it gets worse? And she's like, then it'll be our fault and our responsibility. And I really like that idea. I really like the idea of it, like, sort of... Because when you try and make things better and people say, well, you know, what if things get worse? What if, you know, the current system is fine enough? And I always just think, yeah, but what if it's already bad, you know? I know that's veering into politics, but yeah.
It's interesting because throughout the whole series, people have been coming up to Steve being like, can you cure... I think at one point someone said, can you cure my daughter of autism? Or something like that.
Yes, that was Dave. He was saying that he has like a niece who is awesome. So it's not one of the kids that she tried to Heaven's Gate. It's a different kid.
Right, it's a different one. Yeah, it's interesting that that's happened throughout the series and we see it so much. People being like, well, why can't you do anything about this? And it's interesting, the whole thesis of the show is that we use having a higher power or the idea of a higher power to excuse our own actions.
To defer responsibility.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that's quite interesting that Judy's like, right, we do away with the idea of God and leave things to ourselves and we have to take full responsibility and start over.
So Steve is still not quite sure. So Judy is like, check your files, right? Ask if this is how it's meant to be. And he does the church and he's like, yes, this is the point. You know, the family business closing up shop. And then we really get really tender moment because... in this moment, it stops being about some prophecy and some divine plan and stuff, and just Steve, the person, doesn't want to go. Not yet. You know, why can't we just stay together and then I'll sacrifice myself at the end of my natural life? You know, and it's like no. It has to be now. And then he has a bit of a 10th Doctor regeneration moment. Where he says, no, I mean, come on, I could do miracles. I could bring Pete back. I could bring everyone back. I could do all the stuff people are asking me of. You know, now that I realise that, at some point, suddenly he wants to sort of go a bit Old Testament with it. You know, otherwise he'd have to die. But then he clocks that I'd go mad with power because he thinks about it and he's already starting to go mad and he realises that no, I gotta do this now. And so he eated the spaghetti, you know.
And then he has a fit, and it's a fantastic performance by Christopher Eccleston, and he dies. And I think what's one interesting thing in there is, in that conversation, Judy admits that she never asked Steve out, despite knowing his entire life that he fancied her, because she was always waiting and hoping for
someone better.
For better, yeah, as if to highlight that Steve's life as a man actually wasn't up to much. And so sort of he's been endowed with this
special source.
I would say this specialness that actually for him, when he has this fit of saying, well, what if I stayed? His life isn't worth staying. If that makes sense. It's quite upsetting if you think about it that way.
It feels like a cruel thing to say to someone moments before they die.
Yeah.
I mean, she was honest. That's one thing I think whenever Leslie Sharp is cast as an actor, is cast as a character, the character is always like honest to a fault, incredibly like shrewd and straight talking and won't take shit, will challenge everyone around themselves, but misses out on that kind of like tenderness sometimes.
Yeah.
And Judy has that. She's so tough that she misses what's right in front of her.
And so we get our apocalypse. We get our third testament. We get our apocalypse. Although I heard apocalypse is in Greek actually means a new beginning. I just heard that from a philosophy tube video. You can fact check me, Zach.
I'm just
Oh right,
It's because apo means away from, and then calypse
is a dance.
Kaluptane means to cover. So you uncover something.
Oh,
nice.
So I think the apocalypse must be like from the Book of Revelation, i.e., it's when everything will be revealed.
So then we see this death again, but from a closed circuit camera that was recording the whole thing. Turns out that there had been cameras wired up to Judy's house, and in a voiceover, Judy revealed that, you know, and that's what happened. And then she says, and now it gets rebroadcast years later, you know, people still play the footage. We cut to what turns out to be a documentary about this second coming of 2003. And we get a great line from Judy, from Leslie Sharp, that people think that he left us with nothing, but really he left us with everything. And we also get like updates from all the other characters. So like Frank is in prison and says, see, I was right, I was on something. That's like, you can shut the hell up, Frank. But
when earlier, so I'm going to take that pin out that I said I would put in earlier. When we were talking about these weird camera angles, I noticed watching that there were a lot of zooms, and most directors in professional film and television don't use zooms anymore, because apparently in the 80s, when people got portable cameras, everyone was using zooms left, right and centre, to the point that they look very unprofessional, and they look
look a bit gauche,
and they look very much like you're guerrilla filming on the street. And so when there's so much zooming in this show, it creates a sense of awareness of the camera and awareness of the fourth wall, because zooms do remind you that you're not using your eyes, you're using a camera because your eyes can't zoom.
Not with that attitude.
Therefore, the show then is hinting to the fact that it's a documentary. Maybe that's a stretch.
No, I love that theory. That's so cool. Because it's very much like of its era in terms of the digital technology they use, using broadcast television to announce things as exposition.
Which in a documentary, you would cut.
Interesting.
I mean, obviously, it's not like you've just had the rug pulled under you and you've been watching a documentary the whole time, because it is still very much a drama, because there's no way all these things could have been filmed. But it's playing.
Yes.
It's playing with the line there. You could intercut news footage into a documentary.
Yeah. So Dave took custody of the kids, and now Fiona lives down south so that she can see them more often. And she's lost contact with Judy. She doesn't speak to her anymore. Apparently, Judy wants like quite a quiet, private life. So it's we see that like sort of this, this group of friends from the beginning are all disbanded now.
Well, there's only 2 of them left, really.
I mean, still.
Yeah. And
so you kind of wonder what's happening with Judy, and you think that her life might be quite depressing, and like she sort of walks out of the like documentary interview, like sort of putting her hand to the camera and everything.
I love that. That was so MTV of her. No more questions.
Yeah.
She's fed up of talking about it. And we cut to her in a massively oversaturated supermarket.
I think I know which supermarket. I think it's the Asda in Hume.
Well, funnily enough, Pip, that is, I'm pretty sure, the Asda that they filmed the Curious Folk supermarket in.
No way. It's mid Asda. I don't rate it that much.
But yeah, I thought maybe she was in heaven because of the massive oversaturation.
It's so oversaturated.
Yeah, well, I thought the supermarket from Cucumber, which is a bit it's a bit metaphorical. I don't know, like I thought, is she in the metaphorical supermarket from Cucumber? But no, she's in a real supermarket, and sort of people kind of notice her but don't go up to her. It's the kind of Kerry Katona type of celebrity of like, you recognize them, but at this point they are just they just have like a normal life, and they did a thing a while ago, and so she gets recognised, basically.
I thought I was going to say, me when I see a real housewife of Cheshire in real life, you don't go up to them, you just point and giggle.
Have you had that experience ever, Zach?
Yes, yeah.
Oh, wow.
You know my story about getting approached by someone, and I think that they recognise me from something, but they actually just clocked me as autistic.
Oh. No, I need to catch up on that episode. I don't.
Okay, yeah, it's a good one.
What, you thought they thought you were like, whoa, it's Louis Davies?
Well, no, yeah, I thought that they recognised me as like maths.meme, which is my meme page back in the day.
Oh, yeah.
But actually, they were just like, are you autistic? And it's because I was on like a bit of a, one of those days where you wear a lot of baggy clothing, right? Mm-hmm. And I was walking around the park. And so then I was like, I need to wear, like right now I'm wearing my like lovely lobster shirt.
I was going to compliment you on it. It's lovely.
And it's like, and so I said that like, I need to always be wearing something this cunty when I go out so that no one thinks I'm lonely. Because this is the thing, because obviously I am autistic, so that wasn't the issue. But from there was the immediate assumption that, no, I know how it feels to like be lonely. And I was like, oh.
It's a bit rude, a bit heavy for a stranger.
No, yeah, I had to. I mean, he clearly was also autistic and probably lonely, but like I was like, I gotta just, I gotta beat the allegations, right? Sorry, I'm recapping something I already said on the podcast. Very bad form.
That's all right. That was for my benefit. Thank you.
But yeah,
my theory is that the supermarket's so oversaturated to look heavenly to imply that heaven is now a place on earth.
And it's Asda and Hume.
Ooh, baby. Yeah.
And it's because Judy, when asked if she wants to keep her points or give them to charity, she gives them to charity because she realises that's a good, nice thing to do.
Yes.
And then when we go to the car park of the supermarket, and who does she bump into, Louis?
Johnny Tyler, who has no recollection of the events of 2003. Yeah, right. He doesn't remember any of the demon stuff. He knows that she came round to his house on the day, Stephen Baxter died. He knows that he was going through a tough time, but then he sort of took the initiative himself and didn't blame his sort of problems on his chip shop job or something, and just kind of the message of what Judy was saying at the end of in that Last Supper. And so now he's sort of doing better. They talk a bit about the events of that day and do you think it was actually? So first we see that it turns out that Judy is not lonely in the supermarket. Actually, she does have a husband who's there at the car. And I don't know why they weren't shopping together, whatever. Turns out he's the police officer who stayed there the whole night because he said that someone needed to protect her, and now they have a kid or 2 kids or something.
They've got a 2-year-old daughter, she says.
Yes.
Who spilled juice everywhere.
Yeah, and a very beautiful moment that sort of, she gets to have a life even after all this. That's all anyone can really want,
And then they discuss that they're both waiting. They were both thought the resurrection might happen, and they were waiting for Steve to come back after he died. But then no, that's Judy says that's what she got rid of. That she got rid of all this religious supernatural stuff, and it's now just down to the human beings.
Yes.
Yeah.
No, I did love that sort of playing over expectation, because we have all these ideas of things that happened in the Jesus story which need to happen maybe in the same way or maybe in a different way, but need to crop up at some point in the story. But what if humanity was resurrected instead of just some guy?
Why? We were discussing before we started recording the podcast how we all kind of expected Steve to almost pop up in that final shot of the supermarket.
I didn't. I'm a staunch atheist. I was no, God is dead,
But he doesn't, because that would undermine the idea.
No, yeah, he doesn't show up, yeah. So we just end on Judy asking Johnny, hey, I don't know, do you think it was the right thing? And Johnny doesn't answer and is oh, look at the time, gotta go. And so it's kind of leaves it open like that, yeah.
Yeah, and it's just a car park at the end of the day. That's what life is.
We thank the Lord for all we've got, including this brand new parking lot. I never thought I would reference the Lorax of all things. I
think the Lorax can be applied to lots of things, actually.
Yes.
I saw a very funny meme where it is the Lorax plays Minecraft and finds out what the first thing you do when you play Minecraft.
What's the first thing you do when you play Minecraft?
You cut down trees.
No. What to make things.
They grow back incredibly quickly. You only need 2 in-game nights to double the amount of trees you've got through growing saplings. It's fine.
Anyway, that's the end of the Second Coming, part 2, and the end of the series.
Yay.
Yes, but what this was the first instance of was something which would become a Russell T Davies staple, the trademark too long epilogue. You see the thing end, and then they do a few scenes afterwards.
Yeah, this was 10 minutes. After I saw when I was watching it, Stephen Baxter dies, and there's still more than 10 minutes left to go.
Yeah, you thought he was going to resurrect in those 10 minutes. You were wrong.
I really was sold on the resurrection. But what does that say about me and my upbringing, eh?
I don't know. Maybe the Christ figure not getting resurrected is just proof that Judaism was the correct one all along.
Yes, it's true. I think it deals with other creeds very swiftly in the first episode that you don't really get any room to sort of explore things in the second.
Yes, there's one line from Steve saying, hey, Christians,
don't be smug that you were right.
Gloat to everyone else about how you're right. Don't be smug. Okay. I don't know. He doesn't even say and if you're not Christian, chill out. You know what I mean? He just says to Christians, don't be smug or whatever. And then we don't really go into, what the entirety of Asia is doing, for example, I know there are a lot of Christians in Asia, but there's far more non-Christians.
I suppose the thing is, the show is so caught up on this idea that it only works if God is man and man is God, because otherwise then you can't kill God. And as far as I'm aware, Christianity is the only major world faith that allows for that circumstance. And so that's why I think it has to hyper-focus on the Christian theology. Because the second you open, I mean, obviously a lot of respect for RTD as a writer, but I think the second you open that can of worms, you stray further from the point of the show.
And I think people sometimes expect him to be able to juggle all these different issues in one episode of TV. And I just think you can't do representation right in that short span of time with one person's experience that they're writing from.
Yeah. Christianity, the only religion we can kill. You heard it here first.
I think there's a thesis that Russell T Davies has that he will take to Doctor Who, both his original run and then also the first season of his current run that's just ended, in that there is something, if not divine, then special and important about being human and normal, which this show, I wouldn't say celebrates, because the way that Judy sort of handles Steve before he dies, saying, yeah, you were nothing special, doesn't meet that thesis. But in the end, the show says, human beings, you need to sort yourselves out.
But she says he was nothing special, but she loved him anyway. And I think that's just really nice. Just being alive you don't have to do anything special or important. Just kind of existing is enough.
How strange it is to be anything at all.
Wonderful.
And I'm taking it full circle because that is a Neutral Milk Hotel lyric. Yeah, I really liked this band. Oh well.
Taking it full circle, what did we think of The Second Coming? Sum it up very briefly. It's resounding silence. No one had any thoughts. Or all the thoughts are downloading.
Sorry, I just had to check I wasn't misquoting the lyric. I'm weird like that.
Sum it up. I don't think we've talked enough about how great Christopher Eccleston was, honestly. But my summing up would be Leslie Sharp in everything, please.
Yes.
Forever.
No, yeah, we love Leslie Sharp. We're gonna enter a bit of a Leslie Sharp drought after this, so I thank you for really place focus on that, because she's so good at these characters who are quite kind of reserved, and sort of the emotion has to burst out, otherwise it'll be sort of said with sort of a tone of it's a certain sadness that's not overstated, but you feel it on a very deep level, and
she's just so authentic. I think she's very Girl Next Door in the way that the Girl Next Door should be, actually is. She's just so straight talking, and you get the sense that she is the character that she's playing.
I think I think if you just look at the show as sort of a dialogue between kind of the fact that Britain is a constitutionally Protestant, specifically, country that has this institution of the church, but its sort of influence has been diminished so much that it's just a thing which has our head of state at the top of it, but even then that head of state doesn't do anything apart from take taxpayer money, which, I don't know, maybe they need it, maybe they don't, let's not get into that. This kind of feels indicative of what the 20th century has kind of brought us to, and the world that doesn't need religion anymore and does good and bad, despite it. But also, if you see this as something, as a bit of a kind of end of history metaphor, but for religion, and then you look at sort of fact that this only really applies to the UK, because even in the USA, the influence Christianity has over sort of stuff, which ironically they're the one that claims to be a secular country, and then we're the one that claims to be a religious country. And here politicians never talk about religion, and in America they do far more often. It's very good, but you do have to remember it's not universal, because this kind of story would look very different if you made it in any other country, I think.
Wow.
That was a bunch of thoughts just sort of bleeding into each other like Pete over the floor, but yeah.
Fabulous.
Yeah, I think, religion is such a beast to tackle, and I think ITV were very brave to commission it, and I'm happy that it exists. as a show and a thought piece and a period of time that existed.
I know, right? It seemed like the kind of thing that only Channel 4 would dare do nowadays. But,
Yeah.
Well, my question is, having seen the whole thing now, and the suggestion that this could be remade by RTD in the future, would you like to see it remade? Do you think it needs remaking?
I would love to see it remade, but I think it would run into trouble in terms of there would be a whole thing about like who they cast as the Son of God, because obviously Christopher Eccleston did a fantastic job, but they're not really on good terms, are they? And then it would be like, should we cast it as someone unconventional? Should we cast it as a woman, someone who's not white? And then I think it would get caught up in that debate of who should be the main character rather than exploring the themes that are part of the thing itself.
Yeah, I think we discussed this in the last episode too, and I think my position hasn't changed of like, you know, if it gets remade, have it done by a different person, sort of a different perspective, and sort of think about what the world is like now compared to, you know, just after 9/11.
Because the parallels are drawn between the death of Steve Baxter and 9/11. Where were you when Steve Baxter died?
And oh boy, look at the decisions humanity made after 9/11. Hoo-hoo.
I think it would end up being about how the human race is fighting each other and destroying each other and destroying itself.
How we haven't gotten much better.
But yeah, that's the second coming, guys.
Yes, we have come for a second time.
Speak for yourself.
Thank you so much for coming on today's show, Pip.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah. You can follow us on Instagram at Davis on Davis. You can follow me at Instagram, Louis on Air, and Twitter, Louis on the Air. And now, let's hear about your Fringe show.
Yeah, let's. Right, so we have a show. Zach is kind of producing it. I wrote it. Called Anti-Heroine. It's a feminist one-woman show about a woman that takes place over a series of days in her life as she goes from doing okay to doing much worse. And we are playing at Greenside in the Olive Studio in August from the 2nd to the 10th. So come along if you want to have a laugh.
In Edinburgh, we should say.
In Edinburgh at the Fringe Festival.
In Edinburgh.
Exactly. The most important part.
Yes, I can't wait to go to Edinburgh between those dates so that I catch the show. I can't wait to meet you two in person.
You'll have a giggle. There's something for everyone. Yeah, thanks, Louis.
And if you've been loving Russell T Davies's content all set in Manchester, you'll be glad to know that Anti-Heroine it's a love letter to female friendship and bathroom stalls. That's the official tagline. But I also like to think that it's a love letter to being a young person in your early 20s in Manchester.
Yes, we're in familiar territory here.
And you'll be very sad to know that, stay tuned, but the next show we're covering is Mine or Mine, which is famously not set in Manchester. So please don't get too upset. I'm sure it'll still be fun.
Okay. Bye, everyone. Bye.
Bye. See you later.
Bye.